History That Doesn't Suck is supported by Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy because it's 100% online. You know, when you think about it, history is about the legacies people leave behind. But how often do we think about our own? Especially when it comes to the hard what-if scenarios. I've seen firsthand how much stress a family goes through when a loved one passes, without a plan in place. It's not just the grief, it's the sudden weight of financial uncertainty that follows. Ethos can help provide financial security for the people who matter most. You can get a life insurance quote in seconds and apply in as little as 10 minutes, often with same-day coverage. One of the best parts is that there's no medical exam. You just answer a few health questions online. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some policies are even as low as $30 a month. Get your free quote at ethos.com/HTDS. That is ethos.com/HTDS. Application times may vary. Rates may vary. Hey, Professor Jackson here. As we approach America's 250th, many may feel our hyper-partisan discord means that the Republic is failing. But I see it differently. Though our divisions are tough, they're not new. And, I argue, prove the American experiment works. My new book, Been There, Done That, explores how historical challenges, fake news, contested elections, and political violence are familiar. It's a candid yet hopeful history, showing how past principles can guide us toward a still more perfect union. The book publishes June 16th. Pre-order now from your preferred retailer. Details are at htdspodcast.com/book. And thank you for supporting HTDS. History That Doesn't Suck is supported by Ring. Because with Ring, it's protected. I live in a cave. Well, not an actual cave, but a writing and recording cave, which is what my wife calls it. She works in an office, and I work from home most days. I spend a lot of time down in my home studio and am barely aware of what's going on outside. That's why I love having the Ring battery doorbell. I can keep track of deliveries and see exactly what's happening at my front door in real time without leaving my basement studio. And for the rest of my home, the Outdoor Cam Plus gives a wide field view with super clear retinal 2K video. So even at night, I know my yard and everything in it is covered. You can even upgrade to 4K cameras with ultra clear footage and the ability to zoom in without things getting blurry. For me, it's all about awareness right from my phone, whether I'm in my writing cave or actually away from home. The door, the yard, the home, it's everything I care about. And with Ring, it's protected. Shop cameras, doorbells, and more right now at ring.com. It's early in the still dark morning on an unspecified day in June 1942, and Norman Rockwell is lying in his bed at home in Arlington, Vermont. His wife is sleeping soundly, but Norman? Not at all. The lanky, thin-haired painter and illustrator is tossing and turning, suffering as creative minds are wont to do, as he obsesses over an idea that's so close to perfect, but just not there. You know, let's allow the tortured artist to wrestle with his mental demons for a minute, while I give you some background. Here's the deal. Norman Rockwell and his likewise illustrator buddy, Meade Schaefer, or Schaaf, as Norman calls him, both want to do their part in the war effort. But they aren't young men. They were born in the 1890s. Yeah, the previous century. So enlisting isn't the answer. But that's fine. Both feel they can contribute more with a paintbrush than a gun. They want to produce some war-supporting posters for Uncle Sam. And Norman has an idea. He wants to bring to life those 4 freedoms that President Franklin Roosevelt proclaimed in his annual message on January 6, 1941. The freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. Yes, I'm sure it sounds familiar. We heard that speech in episode 189, and FDR used these 4 freedoms as his basis for pushing Americans to build that British-supporting arsenal of democracy that he had called for but a week before that. They surfaced again later that same year, 1941, in August, when FDR and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill issued their Atlantic Charter, which Norman has been contemplating. He sees protecting these cherished freedoms as America's reason for fighting, and he wants to convey that in art. But how? How does one make something as abstract as different concepts of freedom a concrete visual in his style, his illustrative realism? This is his thing, but getting it right, that's what has him tossing and turning. But enough background. Let's get back to our famed illustrator. It's now about 3 a.m. Suddenly, Norman shoots up like a rocket as an idea strikes him. And that idea is his dear neighbor, Jim Edgerton. At a recent town meeting, nearly everyone supported a proposal to build a new school. Everyone except Jim. He was brave enough to stand and speak against the popular measure, and likewise, the rest of Arlington's citizens were brave enough to hear him out. No one shouted him down. They let him speak. And now, at 3 a.m., with a war raging that raises questions of whether democracy and its attendant values are worth defending, this memory of a simple town meeting hits Norman like lightning. This is his illustration of the freedom of speech. Simply a man standing and speaking as his fellow citizens sit and hear him out. That's the visual. And surely this is the answer for all 4 freedoms. Illustrate the ways in which his little town in Vermont quietly lives and enjoys these very freedoms every day. Filled with energy, Norman charges down the stairs. He's got to call Shafe and share his epiphany. No, wait. It's 3 a.m. Can't place a call at this hour. He'd disturb all the other households on Shafe's party line. He'll have to do this in person. Dashing outside, the gangly illustrator grabs his bike and rides down the country road to Shafe's house. Ripped from his slumber, Shafe comes to the door, and as the two carry on with their pre-dawn chat, he's filled with just as much excitement as Norman. Yes, this communicates what America is about and what America is fighting to preserve. In following days, Norman makes an initial sketch of all 4 freedoms. He and Shafe travel to Washington, D.C., where they offer their drawings as posters to the U.S. government. Now, according to Norman, the Office of War Information flatly rejects him and Shafe, saying the OWI plans instead, quote, to use fine artsmen, real artists, close quote. Whether this is true will later be debated, but what we do know is this. Ben Hibbs at the Saturday Evening Post loves the 4 freedoms concept, and after 6 grueling months of starts and stops, Norman delivers 4 oil paintings. One of a family gathered around the Thanksgiving table as a grandmother places a large turkey on it. The freedom from want. One of a mother lovingly tucking in soundly sleeping children, clearly unfettered by the horrors the onlooking father was just reading about in the newspaper, still in his hand, with a headline about bombings. The freedom from fear. One of earnest, contemplating faces and clasped hands, but from different faiths, as indicated by a rosary in one and a book in another. The freedom of worship. And finally, a man standing in a crowded town hall, his lips parted in speech as the seated audience listens respectfully. Yes, Norman's 3 a.m. epiphany now on canvas. The freedom of speech. Welcome to History That Doesn't Suck. I'm your professor, Greg Jackson, and I'd like to tell you a story. Published by the Post between February and March 1943, Norman Rockwell's 4 Freedoms proved to be his most famous works. Moreover, with American troops coming off of grueling fighting on Guadalcanal in the Pacific and still eating sand in their fight against the desert fox in North Africa, Norman's timing couldn't have been better. His striking oils are a vivid reminder of what this war is about and serve as a morale-boosting, healing balm. Government agencies and publishers alike produce millions of reprints, while the Treasury Department sends the original oil paintings on tour, raising what Norman reports to be $132,992,539 worth of war bonds. Yes, Norman, I think you can and did contribute more to the U.S. war effort with a paintbrush than a gun. That is some fine propaganda. Whoa. Hold up. Norman Rockwell? Propaganda? Okay, before you come at me with a pitchfork like an American Gothic farmer, I assure you, I love Norman Rockwell's work. But how do I enjoy art that I'm also calling propaganda? Let's take a step back. What exactly is propaganda? Let's start with the propaganda master who makes our skin crawl the most, Dr. Joseph Goebbels. We met this Nazi with a PhD in literature back in episode 184, and in 1929, he gave this definition. Propaganda has only one object, to conquer the masses. Every means that furthers this aim is good. Every means that hinders it is bad. Okay, and just who or what are the masses? Well, he clarifies this in his 1934 book, Battle for Berlin, in which he adds that masses are unformed stuff. Only in the hands of the political artists do the masses become a people, and the people a nation. For Dr. Goebbels, then, propaganda is the narrative that forges a nation, and good and evil aren't questions of truth, but whether the narrative serves the cause. Yeah, gross. Conversely, Director of the U.S. Office of War Information, Elmer Davis, yes, the same agency Norman Rockwell claims passed on his 4 Freedoms posters, believes that his agency's job is to tell the truth. He believes in relying on entertainment, because when people watch a movie, quote, they do not realize that they are being propagandized, close quote. I posit that all of this is true. Propaganda can and has been used to do great evil. But at its core, propaganda isn't about pushing good or evil. It's about pushing a narrative, which may be good or evil. And just because we might like or agree with the narrative being shared, like, say, that fighting for a democracy is right, that doesn't make it not propaganda. And so, today's tale is America's World War II propaganda, its narrative rallying the nation to war. To that end, we'll read a comic about a new superhero ready to sock old Adolf in the kisser. We'll catch up with an old director friend of ours from past episodes, using the silver screen to explain why we fight. And then, using entertainment the OWI way, we'll head to a beautiful movie palace to see one of my favorite films, Casablanca. And spoiler alert, I will give away the ending, but if you haven't seen this over 80-year-old movie by now, sorry, that's on you. After Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman steal our hearts, we'll see what Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck are up to. Meet a zany joke of a soldier, teaching U.S. servicemen what not to do by, in fact, doing it all wrong. Then encounter propaganda aimed at U.S. soldiers, but created by the Axis. These would be the broadcasts of that siren of the Pacific radio waves, Tokyo Rose. Finally, we'll wrap all of this up with a little reflection on American propaganda as a whole. Whew, posters, comics, film, radio, we've got a lot of ground to cover. So let's get to it, and we do so by heading back to shortly before the U.S. joined this Second World War. Rewind. As we know from episodes 188 and 189, late 1930s to early 1940s Americans are a divided people when it comes to World War II. On the one hand, the America First Committee advocates for not getting sucked into another European war, for isolationism. On the other are those aligned with President Franklin Roosevelt, who believe that the nation must support the already at war British in their fight against a continent-gobbling dictator. But FDR isn't waging this pre-Pearl Harbor war of opinion alone. As Germany, Italy, and Japan wreak havoc, American artists working in various mediums can't help but join the fight. The first explicitly anti-Nazi work to grace the silver screen is the Warner Brothers film Confessions of a Nazi Spy. Made at the behest of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, the movie is a fictionalized telling of a nonetheless real Nazi spy ring uncovered in New York. It's a bold movie to make in this still isolationist year of 1939. Bold enough that Arsons put some theaters showing it to the flame. But comedy actor Groucho Marx has nothing but respect for the brave filmmakers behind it. He declares, "I want to propose a toast to Warner's, the only studio with any guts." This is only the start of a flood of anti-Nazi works that followed the invasion of Poland that September. In January 1940, the Three Stooges portray and mock Adolf Hitler in their short film, You Nazi Spy. In October, Charlie Chaplin rocks a toothbrush mustache as he brilliantly, and not so subtly, mocks the Fuhrer in the film, The Great Dictator. Moving from the silver screen to the page, Theodore Geisel, or Dr. Seuss, as this children's author and political cartoonist is best known, takes one hard swing after the next at Nazism in the nation's newspapers. One such cartoon from these still isolationist years depicts a mother wearing a sweater that, in a clear nod to the isolationist America First Committee, has America First emblazoned on the chest. With one child seated on each side of her, the mother holds a book titled Adolf the Wolf, which the caption tells us reads, quote, "And the wolf chewed up the children and spit out the bones. But those were foreign children, and it really didn't matter." Close quote. The mother's face beams as she reads, utterly failing to note her own children's terrified expressions. But it isn't just traditional political cartoons making commentary. With a cover date of March 1941 belying his actual release date of December 1940, a new and colorful superhero is ready to take the fight to Hitler. He's the work of two Jewish artists from the Lower East Side in New York City, Joe Simon and Jacob Kurtzberg, or Jack Kirby as he prefers. This creative set, both at Timely Comics, have created a star-spangled hero who, on his very first cover, is punching the daylights out of the Fuhrer. You know what? I've got a dime. I'll buy us a copy of this first issue so we can get lost in its fictional pages. It's an unspecified day, 1941. We're at or near a U.S. Army base called Camp Lehigh, and General Charles Manner is just coming home from an exhausting, demoralizing day. A new bomber plane undergoing testing exploded into flames. No survivors. And to make matters worse, George Maxson of the Maxson Aircraft Corporation was there to see it. One of the loudmouths at the camp, Private Steve Rogers, thinks it was sabotage. But who knows? That's something to look into tomorrow. For now, the white-haired general with an equally white mustache is happy to melt into his chair by the fire and rest for the evening. Huh, what's this? A box on his desk. A gift. He opens it. It's a red skull? With a letter, no less, saying this is his last night on Earth. Ridiculous. Dismissing it as a quote-unquote flimsy joke, he turns around and tosses the note into the crackling fire. Just then, from the corner of the room, a hideous, taunting voice calls out, "General Manner." The white-haired military man turns and can hardly believe his eyes. A hideous figure with a bright red skull, deep yellow eyes, and clammy green hands wearing a baggy brown jumpsuit with a massive white swastika on it, stalks toward him. It's none other than the Red Skull. In a swift two-panel move, the monstrous figure leaps forward, grabbing the general by the throat and pinning him to the ground. Charles Manner grasps and gasps as his terrifying assailant cackles out.
"Peer into my eyes, General. Look at death."
It's already over. But one panel later, the swastika-wearing skull stands over the general's uniformed corpse, still cackling. As the Red Skull crosses the name General Manner off a list, the deceased officer's wife enters. The hideous brute shows no remorse as he mocks the sorrowful woman and tosses her across the room. All appears hopeless. But then, like an angry tornado, as the pink-colored caption box tells us, a savior dives into the frame, tackling the Red Skull with power and fury. It's the once frail young man turned into a hero by a super soldier serum at the start of this comic. The one and only Captain America. Wielding a striped and star-spangled triangular shield, the muscular, chiseled freedom fighter in red, white, and blue now goes head-to-head with this velvet villain. Oh no! The Red Skull has him and is forcing Captain America to look into his eyes. But just then, another figure appears on the scene, delivering a hard kick to the Red Skull. It's our hero's sidekick, Bucky. Freed from the evil clutches of the Red Skull, Cap is back in action. He delivers one punch after another, and then, pow! He punches the Red Skull so hard, the hideous red mask shatters. The mask falls away, revealing the Red Skull's true identity. It's none other than George Maxson, the maker of the plane that was sabotaged earlier today. But he won't be caught alive. George rolls over on his own deadly hypodermic needle. Cap and Bucky leave. The FBI's G-men arrive to find a letter addressed to George Maxson, alias the Red Skull. That explains everything. It reads, "When America is within the fold of the Great Reich, the post of Minister of All American Industry shall be the reward of your excellent spy work." And it's signed, the Führer. And so, the Red Skull's defeated. Steve Rogers and Bucky are relaxing back at Camp Lehigh. Nonetheless, the duo's fight against Adolf has only begun. As the last panel tells us, but the work of Captain America is never done, as they plunge into new exploits against America's enemies. Watch for the next issue. Captain America catapults to fame, right up there with Batman and Superman, both of whom are also turning their eyes to the European conflict. And hey, I hope you aren't too disappointed that we didn't get to see Cap actually slug Hitler in those pages. Alas, as any comic fan will tell you, the cover isn't canon. But that does bring up a problem that comics will face throughout the whole war. Why can't these superheroes just end the war? Well, Captain America is a human with super strength, so putting him anywhere in Europe, the Pacific, or the States to dodge bullets is no problem. Superman is trickier. His comic writers have to find reasons to keep Superman in the fight, winning it, but not ending it. They have Clark Kent attempt to enlist, accidentally use his X-ray vision during the eye exam, and get dismissed for terrible vision. Sure, that works. As we heard about in the previous episode, once the war effort begins back home, these superheroes begin selling bonds and stamps, encouraging Americans to do the same. Even after Joe Simon, Jack Kirby, and a young nobody named Stanley Lieber, or Stan Lee to use a perhaps more familiar name, enlist, their comic creations remain central to morale, both on the home front and the actual front. Meanwhile, Hollywood is only going deeper into the fray. And I'm not just talking about its entertainment. I mean that in a literal way. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the U.S. Army takes steps to ensure it can protect the California coast from any similar Japanese aerial attacks by requisitioning Walt Disney's studio lot in Burbank, California, to use as an anti-aircraft base. But fun as that quirky example of a Disney defensive position might be, Hollywood studios are serving the war effort far more by doing what they do best, making movies. This is particularly true as U.S. Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall seeks to educate Uncle Sam's GIs. As the military recruits and relies on the draft, he knows that these new soldiers need more than orders. They need to understand why they're fighting, why they're sacrificing. But even as George makes textbooks covering U.S. history, civics, democracy, and international relations widely available to the rank and file, he thinks that film might be a more universal, more dramatic way to convey all of this. And so, he looks to a filmmaker who can help Americans understand why we fight. It's the morning of an unspecified day, somewhere between late February and early March 1942. Following an escort, a square-jawed movie director with slick black hair and a recent commission, Frank Capra, walks through what he calls the labyrinth ways of the Pentagon. Yes, that Frank. It's been a while since we first met him in episode 118 as a sick and scared kid arriving from Italy at Ellis Island. But he's all grown up now. One of the biggest names in Hollywood, the recipient of multiple Academy Awards. But none of that steadies him today. It's Mr. Frank Capra, not his fictional Mr. Smith, who's now gone to Washington. And not to deal with Congress, but with someone far more intimidating. U.S. Army Chief of Staff, General George C. Marshall. As instructed, Frank steps inside George's office. Seated at his large wooden desk with lion head drawers, the white-haired, blue-eyed Chief of Staff only gives him a quick look. Dry-mouthed, Frank manages to eke out,
"Major Capra, sir."
As he sits, the filmmaker can't help but imagine casting George as a serious-minded Okie living through the last decade's Dust Bowl. Finally, George sets down his pen. Now turning his intense concentration on Frank, he gets straight to the point.
"Mr. Capra, you have an opportunity to contribute enormously to your country and the cause of freedom. Are you aware of that, sir?"
Remembering an earlier directive from his escort to shoot straight with few words, Frank blurts out,
"Well, General Marshall, I mean, if you're asking me, does it scare the heck out of me? I'll have to say, yes, sir, it does."
George doesn't break into a smile, but he cracks a little. The general then explains more fully.
"Within a short time, we will have a huge citizens' army in which civilians will outnumber professional soldiers by some 50 to 1. What is in question is this: will young, freewheeling American boys take the iron discipline of wartime? In my judgment, the answer is yes. If they are given the answers as to why they are in uniform, and if the answers they are given are worth fighting and dying for. I want to nail down with you a plan to make a series of documented, factual information films that will explain to our boys in the Army why we are fighting and the principles for which we are fighting."
Frank replies cautiously,
"General Marshall, it's only fair to tell you that I have never before made a single documentary film. In fact, I've never even been near anybody that's made one, Capra. I have never been Chief of Staff before. Thousands of young Americans have never had their legs shot off before. Boys are commanding ships today who a year ago had never seen the ocean before. I'm sorry, sir. I'll make you the best damned documentary films ever made."
And with that response, the white-haired general finally cracks a real smile.
"I'm sure you will."
You know, I have to say, I love George Marshall's observation that freewheeling American boys will take to the iron discipline of wartime if they are given answers as to why they are in uniform. He's basically saying the same thing that we heard the Revolutionary War's legendary drill master, Baron von Steuben, say about Continental soldiers back in episode 10. Quote, "The genius of this nation is not in the least to be compared with that of the Prussians, Austrians, or French. You say to a soldier, do this, and he doeth it. But I am obliged to say, this is the reason that you ought to do that. And then he does it." Close quote. 170 years later, and U.S. military leaders are still finding that the American people hold a deep sense of personal freedom, yet have a willingness to step up and serve if the cause is just. Well, Frank sets out to prove the cause is just. Watching Leni Riefenstahl's pro-Nazi film, Triumph of the Will, just as we did in episode 184, Frank intends, he tells us, to, quote, "use the enemy's own films to expose their enslaving ends." Close quote. He means that literally. Relying on 3 million feet of Axis footage, Frank cuts and splices the foe's own work into his 7-part documentary series, Why We Fight. The first film, Prelude to War, explains the path to this conflict, highlighting both the Japanese invasion of Manchuria and the German invasion of Poland. Using footage of marching German troops, our narrator, the ironically Canadian-born Walter Houston, asks,
"Why are we Americans on the march? Is it because of..."
Explosions then roar amid footage of Axis attacks on Pearl Harbor and Allied nations. The film ends with an answer to why we fight that couldn't be more clear. Speaking as a world map engulfed by swastikas and the rays of the Japanese rising sun filled the screen, then cutting to images of Emperor Hirohito, Adolf Hitler, and Benito Mussolini, and scenes of the evil they've caused, destroyed homes, work camps, book burnings, war, and more. The narrator tells the watching soldiers,
"For this is what we are fighting. Freedom's oldest enemy, the passion of the few to rule the many. This isn't just a war. This is a common man's life and death struggle against those who would put him back into slavery. We lose it, and we lose everything. Our homes, the jobs we want to go back to, the books we read, the very food we eat, the hopes we have for our kids, the kids themselves. They won't be ours anymore. That's what's at stake. It's us or them. The chips are down. Two worlds stand against each other. One must die, one must live. 170 years of freedom decrees our answer."
HTDS is supported by Quince. Since it's Mother's Day this month, let me read you a quick actual text from my mom, with her permission, of course. I quote, "I'm glad you advertise with Quince. I'd never heard of the online store before, but decided to get your sister a birthday present from them. Loved their free and super fast shipping, so I got their bath mats. Absolutely thrilled with how soft they are. Perfect density and color. I sound like I'm doing a commercial." Laugh emoji. Yes, you do, Mom, and thanks for the help. I didn't even know Quince had bath mats. She goes on to rave about their $50 cashmere sweater, saying, and I quote again, "I wore it to church on Sunday and got so many unsolicited compliments." Of course you did, Mom. You're beautiful, and I love you. So don't take it from me, take it from my mom. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/HTDS for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/HTDS for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/HTDS. History That Doesn't Suck is supported by Bob's Discount Furniture. You can always tell when a big holiday shopping weekend is coming. Suddenly, it feels like every brand is telling you to hurry before everything's gone. There's so much pressure to buy right away, even if you're not totally ready. That's what I love about Bob's Discount Furniture. Their everyday low prices mean you don't have to stress about timing. You're getting a great deal whenever. If you're like me, you want to do your research and find the right pieces, and not be rushed. I love that Bob's has tons of real 5-star reviews to guide the way. Like the Spencer bedroom set. It has over 6,000 5-star reviews and comes in white or gray, so it fits just about any style. And the built-in storage, including felt-lined drawers, is such a nice touch. If sleep is a priority, the Copper Radiance Queen Extra Firm mattress is another standout. It's got over 400 5-star reviews, is recommended by Consumer Reports, and features a copper-infused cover with high-density Bobopedic foam and a 20-year warranty. For quality furniture and everyday low prices, shop at Bob's. It's where America shops for furniture. This refreshing break is brought to you by Snapple. Facts are stubborn things. That's one of my favorite quotes, spoken by John Adams, of course. But facts are also fun things. Here are a few you might throw out as conversation starters during your next break with friends and colleagues. Snapple Real Fact, number 1477. France used the guillotine as recently as 1977. Yikes. But 4 years later, they abolished the death penalty. Okay, here's a lighter springtime one. Snapple Real Fact, number 705. Every ton of recycled paper saves about 17 trees. Another springtime Snapple Real Fact, number 2002. On May 1st, 1931, the Empire State Building officially opened in New York City. Check out HTDS episode 180 for more on that. It may no longer be the tallest skyscraper, but it's arguably the loftiest. And here's one more Snapple real fact. Before 1859, some baseball umpires sat behind home plate in rocking chairs. Now that's a chill image. This chill break has been brought to you by Snapple. Real tea, real juice, Snapsolutely refreshing. The troops are thoroughly inspired by Frank Capra's films. But what about the rest of America? After all, civilians back home need to know that the possible death of a brother, father, husband, or son is for a worthy cause, and Hollywood's ready to help with that messaging too. Pivoting away from films that could be read as anti-war, like 1939's Gone with the Wind, which is filled with post-Civil War devastation, Tinseltown cranks out movies focused on the terrible necessity of war, like 1941's Sergeant York. Yes, as in Alvin York, the God-fearing pacifist doughboy whose bow shooting and POW capturing bravery during World War I garnered a Medal of Honor, as you likely recall from episode 143. At the insistence of the real Sergeant York, Hollywood's leading man, Gary Cooper, portrays Alvin, teaching the public that, despite the terrible price of war, fighting men and death are both necessary to achieve peace. The role lands Gary an Academy Award for Best Actor. Now, pro-war propaganda isn't Hollywood acting entirely alone. Uncle Sam has a guiding hand in the process. Formed on June 13, 1942, the Office of War Information, or the OWI for short, has previously unprecedented control over what hits America's theaters. Under its guiding hand, American media, ranging from the radio to the press and film, are expected to perform the duty of both informing and inspiring the public. Oh, and is film important? As OWI director Elmer Davis puts it, the movie industry is, quote, the most powerful instrument of propaganda in the world, whether it tries to be or not, close quote. It's hard to argue with the statement. Hollywood cranks out 500 films annually, while raking in about $80 million per week. The OWI keeps a watch on all of Tinseltown's entertaining offerings, including, or perhaps especially, those storytelling films about the war, like Atlantic Convoy, Army Surgeon, and Wake Island. Nor is this watchful office hesitant to offer suggestions. For example, Paramount's So Proudly We Hail about the Siege of Bataan returns from the OWI with a note that the dying army nurse should have a line about how the Japanese spread like a disease. That said, the OWI's hand isn't as strong as all of this might sound. In fact, Hollywood faces fewer restrictions than most wartime industries. As long as a movie doesn't give away military secrets, studios can, in theory, ignore such notes and release what the office deems, quote-unquote, ill-conceived atrocities. And sometimes they do. For instance, Paramount's Lucky Jordan, which tells the tale of a draft-dodging thief inspired to repent of his ways and join the cause after some Nazi spies beat up a sweet grandmother. The OWI expresses concern, fearing that the audience will come away thinking the only reason to fight the Nazis is because they're mean to grandmothers, not core ideological differences. Yeah, Paramount's execs lose zero sleep about this one. They release the film anyway. All that to say, whether OWI influenced or not, 1940s Hollywood ensures that the message of sticking it to old Adolf and the rest of the Axis powers comes across in everything, from the dark dramas The Moon is Down and Hangmen Also Die, to Irving Berlin's Armed Forces musical, This Is the Army. But enough talk about the movies. Let's watch one. Come on, I've already got us tickets for a hot new Warner Brothers flick. It's just before noon, Thanksgiving Day, November 26th, 1942. Showing our tickets to the attendant, we're just stepping into the beautiful Hollywood Theater on 51st and Broadway in New York City. Soon, we enter the foyer, and to say the space is gorgeous is an understatement. Awashed in red and gold, this foyer is a massive, Baroque meets Rococo-style, 3-story rotunda, encircled by 8 fluted columns leading to a cherub-filled ceiling mural with a breathtaking chandelier. Nor does the auditorium itself disappoint. Oh, please, after you. Again, rich red, gilded gold, and columns, yes. And now, even more ceiling murals and a still more opulent chandelier. But also, there are some 1,600 multi-tiered seats. Truly, this Warner Brothers-owned theater doesn't only show art on the screen. It is a work of art itself. Oh, this is our aisle. I know, the guy inhaling popcorn will just have to pull his legs in. We're in the center orchestra. Anyhow, this is the premiere of the newest Warner Brothers film, Casablanca. The plot revolves around a love triangle in Nazi collaborationist Vichy French Morocco. Now, it wasn't supposed to come out until next spring, but as we know from episode 200, Dwight Eisenhower and the boys landed on the shores of Vichy French-controlled North Africa this very month, November 1942. Yeah, Operation Torch. So Warner Brothers couldn't let that perfect PR alignment pass them by. They bumped up the release, and the New York City-based French liberation organizations, France Forever, and the Fighting French Relief Committee couldn't be more delighted as sponsors of the premiere. Ah, here are our seats. And perfect timing. The movie is starting. As the opening credits fill the screen, La Marseillaise fills our ears. Yes, the French national anthem, or rather, the anthem of France's fallen Third Republic. A martial air from the Revolution of 1789, its lyrics literally call on French citizens to take up arms against the ferocious soldiers of tyranny, slay them, and let these villains' impure blood water the fields of a free France. Little wonder that it's banned in occupied and Vichy France. Without even uttering a word, the film has already declared itself pro-liberté, égalité, fraternité, and anti-Nazi. We now watch as the world spins toward Europe. An omnipotent narrator tells us that, with the coming of the Second World War, many eyes in imprisoned Europe turn hopefully or desperately toward the freedom of the Americas. Closing in on Paris, the map fades to a montage of travelers. Lisbon, the narrator tells us, is the embarkation point to freedom in the New World, but refugees must travel a circuitous path first. Paris to Marseille, across the Mediterranean to Oran, then by train or auto or foot, across the rim of Africa to Casablanca in French Morocco. Ah, that's Nazi-aligned Vichy French Morocco, and Casablanca, which isn't just the jumping point to Lisbon, but a city renowned for its corruption, pickpockets, and rapidly shifting allegiances. These realities are quickly reinforced as we learn that 2 German couriers carrying letters of transit have been murdered. These unassigned letters that mysteriously enable their bearer to fly from Casablanca to Lisbon, even against the Nazi or Vichy regime's wishes, serve as our plot device. And against this background, leading authorities descend upon the most popular nightclub in this dishonest city, Rick's Café Américain. These include our villain, Nazi Major Heinrich Strasser, and a more middle ground character, the local police captain, a Frenchman as opportunistic and amorally witty as he is charming, Louis Renault. A sweeping montage displays the club's drinking, gambling, and black market clientele. And then we meet him, our protagonist, Rick Blaine. Played by the not-so-tall but dark and dashingly handsome Humphrey Bogart, Rick is quickly established as a man who never gets too close to anyone or anything. He doesn't drink with customers. Women swoon for him, never the other way around. But is there more to Rick than his cold exterior lets on? As Louis tells Rick that resistance fighter, Victor Laszlo, and his beautiful companion must not be permitted to flee, cool, confident Rick asks, with a cigarette in hand,
Louis, whatever gave you the impression that I might be interested in helping Laszlo escape?
The colorful captain answers,
Because, my dear Ricky, I expect that under that cynical shell, you're at heart a sentimentalist.
He then cites some of Rick's pre-war work, arming the Ethiopians against fascist Italy, fighting against fascism in Spain. I sense foreshadowing. Things move quickly. The desperate Ugarte entrusts Rick with the letters of transit, those carried by the dead couriers, then is immediately arrested. Meanwhile, into the club walks Victor Laszlo, accompanied by a woman who stops Rick's loyal pianist Sam cold. Played by Hollywood's legendary brunette beauty, Ingrid Bergman. This is Ilsa Lund. the love of Rick's life in pre-Nazi Paris. We now have our love triangle. After a tense, awkward meeting between all parties, the Nazi major, the French captain, the resistance fighter, Rick, and the woman who clearly still loves and remains loved by both of the latter, Rick sits alone at his bar. He casually mentions it's December 1941, and without him ever uttering the words Pearl Harbor, we can't help but wonder about its impact on this lonely American. As we stew on this, our handsome, white tux-wearing protagonist despondently utters one of his many famous lines. Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine. A flashback shows us Rick and Ilsa madly in love in Paris, until the day the city fell, when she vanished, leaving only a cryptic note saying she wasn't coming to the train station. We'll learn why later. Back in the present, Rick has the letters of transit, but won't give them to the woman who shattered his heart. The tension builds. Rick rigs his roulette table to help a desperate refugee couple win their way out of Casablanca. Another glimpse of his buried humanity. Disappointed that he can't take advantage of the woman, now that she and her husband have money, Louis charges over to Rick. As I suspected, you're a rank sentimentalist. Victor Laszlo now approaches Rick privately, asking for those letters. He cites the same pre-war evidence of Rick's goodness Louis raised earlier. Rick remains unmoved. He wants to hurt Ilsa the way she hurt him. But their conversation is interrupted by drinking Nazis singing Die Wacht am Rhein. It's an old German song celebrating German valor against the French in their age-old fight over lands along the Rhine River. To sing this here in French Morocco is a naked act of dominance. Victor won't have it. Marching over to the band, the resistance leader demands they play the forbidden French national anthem, La Marseillaise. The band looks over to Rick, who oh so subtly nods. The band plays. Victor sings at the top of his lungs. The Nazis respond by singing all the louder. But the club's international clientele, refugees, rogues, the morally adrift, none of them can take it any longer. In a surge of anti-Nazi patriotism, they rise to their feet and drown the Germans out. Defeated on the field of melodic battle, the Germans sit. The camera then finds Yvonne, a mostly background character with tears streaming. Real tears. The tears of an actual French actress and refugee playing a refugee. And as the singing ends, she cries out, Vive la France! Vive la démocratie! In the scenes that follow, Rick sacrifices everything, sending Ilsa and Victor to Lisbon with the letters, shooting Major Strasser, seemingly dooming himself, all with the most quotable lines in American cinema, including, Here's looking at you, kid. And just as Rick seems destined for a concentration camp, amorally charming Louis finds his soul. He saves Rick, calls him not only a sentimentalist, but a patriot, and punctuates his own conversion by dropping a bottle of water, labeled Vichy, in the trash with disgust. As the two walk off into the night, Rick exclaims, Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And behind them, what plays? That same tyranny-smashing martial air so hated by Nazi Germany, so central to this entire film, La Marseillaise. Wow, that was a great movie. I bet it's a real contender for Best Picture next year at the Oscars. But Hollywood isn't just boosting the war effort on the big screen. It's also enlisting. By the end of 1942, about 4,000 film workers, or roughly 22% of studio employees, have joined the armed forces. Of the 900 actors swelling the service's ranks, you might recognize some names, like Clark Gable, Jimmy Stewart, and, within the first weeks of 1943, Paul Newman. While some of these men will serve on the battlefield, or in the skies in Jimmy Stewart's case, many work to bolster morale, doing traveling performances both stateside and overseas. Comedian Bob Hope discovers that he loves performing for the troops so much that he will continue to do comedy shows for them well after the war is over. Of course, some of the biggest morale boosts come from women like Betty Grable and Rita Hayworth, whose pinups decorate the front of planes and almost every American soldier's tent from North Africa to Midway. But Betty Grable isn't the only star decorating the front of airplanes. That honor also goes to Donald Duck. That's right, animation studios are hard at work pumping out cartoons. Warner Brothers' Bugs Bunny sings Irving Berlin's parody of his own song, Any Yams Today, which the famous songwriter has now turned into Any Bonds Today. At the same time, Walt Disney Studios supplements its less than stellar box office returns from Fantasia with war films like 4 Methods of Flesh Riveting and The Thrifty Pig. More importantly, they do the animation for Frank Capra's Why We Fight series. And to really get butts in seats, they toss in Donald Duck. As Walt himself puts it, quote, "At our studio, that's the equivalent of giving you Clark Gable. Donald Duck is known by the American public. He'll open doors to theaters." Close quote. Donald has many war-driven adventures. In The New Spirit, he learns his patriotic duty. It's essentially the same plot as Frank's Prelude to War. But hey, if it works, it works. In De Fuhrer's Face, a short that uses Spike Jonze and his City Slickers rendition of the song by the same name, Donald unhappily lives under the Nazi regime, working in an artillery factory, hiling every picture of Hitler on a conveyor belt, and reading Mein Kampf at gunpoint every night. And in Spirit of 43, to justify higher taxes to pay for the war effort, Donald is confronted and asked if he wants to forget our fighting men. To this, America's beloved animated duck replies, "No, sir," as our narrator reminds us that every dollar you spend for something you don't need is a dollar spent to help the Axis. But some of the most popular animated shorts aren't meant for the eyes of John Q. Public. Soldiers have a lot to learn, and who better to teach them than the worst animated soldier in the whole U.S. Army? History That Doesn't Suck is sponsored by Indeed. If you run a small business like me, the right person can level everything up. I've got an awesome team, but as we grow, there's more pressure to continue to deliver more history that doesn't suck. So, as I'm thinking about growing the team, I wouldn't just be looking for a writer. I need someone with specific skills in research and citation, plus experience in narrative storytelling. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs is a boost whenever you need to find quality talent. Instead of struggling to get your job post even seen on other websites, sponsored jobs helps your role stand out in search results so you can reach candidates who meet your specific criteria. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates when you join the 3.3 million employers worldwide that use Indeed to connect with quality talent that fits your needs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. You just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. History That Doesn't Suck is supported by Instacart. Instacart is more than a grocery technology platform. It's really about helping make your day-to-day life run a little smoother. It connects you to thousands of stores across the country so you can get what you need without rearranging your entire schedule. For me, that's super important because between teaching, writing, recording, and touring, everything just feels nonstop. My wife and kids are busy too, and I definitely don't want to drop the ball when it's my turn to do the grocery shopping. That's where Instacart comes in. I can sit down for a few minutes and build out my cart with exactly what we need. The household shopping list is pretty specific about brands and produce, so I love that I can leave notes or message my shopper to make sure everything is just right. And the convenience is unmatched. It saves time, it saves stress, and it just makes your life easier. Instacart brings convenience, quality, and ease right to your door so you can focus on what matters most. Download the Instacart app now and get groceries just how you like it. History That Doesn't Suck is sponsored by Angie, the go-to place to hire skilled local pros who can help you tackle some spring household projects. I'm a skilled historian, but not so skilled as a handyman. I mean, I'm not totally useless around the house. I can fix a leaky faucet, but I'm not going to try to replace the hot water heater, for example. That's a real thing that happened last year, by the way. But mostly, I just don't have time. That's where Angie can help. Angie's been around since 1995, so they've got decades of experience helping homeowners tackle everything from quick fixes to big renovations. Just answer a few questions about your project, and Angie connects you with local pros who specialize in exactly what you need. You can read reviews from people in your area, compare quotes, and find your best price without a ton of back and forth. They also cover pretty much everything: cleaning, handyman work, electrical, landscaping, you name it. So whether it's a small job or something bigger, it's all in one place. Download the free Angie app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. It's no particular day, but sometime in 1943. We could be at any one of hundreds of theaters, auditoriums, rec centers, or chapels with projector screens on any military base from Mountain Home, Idaho to Des Moines, Iowa. Or, say, the single-story theater building FA 946 at Fort Berry in Sausalito, California. Soldiers are piling in, ready for some news and entertainment. The soldiers quiet down as the projector fires up. No, this isn't a featured film. It's a series of shorts and newsreels provided by the Army-Navy Screen Magazine. Right now, the men are getting news from abroad. It's exciting to be able to see actual footage from the war. But as they watch, anticipation builds for the Private Snafu cartoon. Yes, snafu meaning, as we learned in episode 201, situation normal, all fouled up. Yeah, the men get a good laugh at that definition. They all know the other word. So who is this unfortunately named cartoon character? Created by Major Frank Capra, drawn by the Warner Brothers animation team, same folks that make Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, and written, or at least early on, by none other than Theodore Geisel, or Dr. Seuss if you prefer. Private Snafu is, as his name implies, the goofiest, most inept, incapable joke of a service member in the U.S. military. He's hilarious, but more than that, Private Snafu is actually military education hidden in entertainment. The men cheer as the screen fills with a shorn-headed, big-eared soldier in a loose-fitting uniform, bounding away from base, telling us in rhyme.
I just learned a secret. It's a honey. It's a pip. But the enemy is listening, so I'll never let it slip. 'Cause when I learn a secret, boy, I zipper up my lip.
The men laugh as Private Snafu turns into a silhouette, displaying his bologna loaf of a brain wrapped in a chain with a padlock. Even this inept soldier with half a brain can keep a secret, it seems. But as he skips into town, everything from cats to horses and lampposts turn out to be hiding posts for the Axis powers' evil-looking spies. They know Snafu's got a secret, and they're going to find it out. Inadvertently giving hints about his secret as he struts about town, our half-wit of a private stops at a bar. Raising a shot in a toast, Snafu assures us,
I'm a sound and silent soldier, just as steady as a rock. Here's to my little secret, with its chain and padlock.
Tossing the shot aside for the whole bottle instead, Snafu silhouettes again. As liquor fills his insides, a vapor rises to that bologna brain, melting the chain and padlock and unzipping his big mouth. He hits on a beautiful blonde and mentions shipping out to Africa. Wait, a blonde? Yes, a German spy. But inebriated Snafu doesn't realize it, even as she sends a message to Adolf Hitler himself. We next see our drunken private covered in lipstick marks, with his femme fatale sitting on his lap. He stammers out to her,
It's been a wonderful evening, and I'd like to stay some more. But I gotta get a move on now. I sail at 4:30.
An X-ray reveals her bra doubles as a swastika-covered Nazi radio transmitter. Snafu's been booby-trapped, and the message again goes to Adolf. The enemy has all they need now. As Snafu sits on board the ship the next day, Nazi U-boats suddenly appear. Ah! They fire torpedoes. The ship manages to escape, but not Snafu. He's fallen overboard. Encircled by the U-boat fleet, he's struck by a fury of torpedoes and blown straight to hell. Inside a boiling pot in the fiery afterlife, Snafu asks the audience,
Now who in hell do you suppose it was that let my secret out?
a horned Hitler poofs in next to him and holds up a mirror. Snafu sees himself, but then his reflection changes. It becomes the backside of a horse. Yes, a horse's ass. Because that's what a drinking, loose-lipped serviceman is. What more is there to say, but that's all, folks. I'm sure you can see how Private Snafu was a huge hit with American trainees. And while the U.S. Armed Forces have to teach their troops how to not get killed and how to protect valuable information, Uncle Sam's continuing to teach his boys not only how, but why they're fighting. That's right. Frank Capra's still at it with his Why We Fight series. And beyond explaining the need to protect democracy, he's also tasked with introducing soldiers and sailors to their enemies. While the two films about Germany and Japan won't be released until 1945, it's pretty clear that America has made a distinction between the two major Axis powers from the get-go. Here is Germany provides a call to action, emphasizing the commonality between the Germans and Americans and perpetrating the trope of the good German. It encourages troops to uproot a culture of violence and aggression in Germany, to help reform the German people in order to join the society of man. On the flip side, Know Your Enemy, Japan, systematically strips away parts of Japanese culture that Americans may deem as quote-unquote civilized in order to help troops not feel guilty about waging war. Frank employs constant reminders of what he frames as Japan's barbaric Mongol heritage, suggesting that Japanese society functions as it did in the Middle Ages, even though the country is technically modernized. The narrative warps traditional Japanese religious practices into warmongering beliefs. Yeah, I trust you can see the difference here. But none of this is to say that the Axis don't propagandize right back. We heard about Dr. Joseph Goebbels and the Ministry of Enlightenment and Propaganda in previous episodes, and Japan acts similarly, promoting its own national interest in occupied territories. But the most well-known form of propaganda out of Japan is actually meant directly for American soldiers. I think it's about time for us to tune in our radios and listen to the famous Tokyo Rose. It's about 6 in the evening, Monday, August 14th, 1944. We're on the beaches of the island of Guadalcanal, an island in the Solomon Islands. Yes, we'll most definitely talk more about this small patch of land in the Pacific later. But for now, all we need to know is that we're joining U.S. Marine Don Huebner at a supply base on this small Pacific island. With the sun setting on his workday, it's time to crack open a can of Spam. And out of the loudspeakers placed in the high palm trees, the radio crackles out the familiar tones for the start of these Marines' most hated and enjoyed program, 0 Hour. I say we're with Don in Guadalcanal, but we could just as easily be with Chief Radio Man J.M. Eekberg on board the Sargo-class submarine, USS Seawolf, or on the Essex-class aircraft carrier, USS Franklin, with Captain James Shoemaker, or almost any place with a radio in the Pacific. Just about every sailor, soldier, and Marine in the Pacific listens to this most notorious DJ, known as Tokyo Rose. Okay, time out. Let's get some context. Tokyo Rose is what the Allied forces call several different female radio personalities broadcasting for the Japanese, mainly on Radio Tokyo's program, The 0 Hour, intentionally attempting to demoralize Allied soldiers. The program plays popular American tunes like Speak to Me of Love and Love's Old Sweet Song, but the hosts also make sure to ask the men aboard these ships, or on the beaches, if they're willing to die so far from home, covered in mud and mosquitoes. They tell these American boys that their girls back home have been unfaithful. They brag about the strong Japanese army that will never surrender, and they always report on the number of Allied ships sunk by the Japanese fleet. Starved for a female voice and happy to ascribe all sorts of sexy attributes to the unseen announcer, the men don't find the propaganda believable or demoralizing enough to pass on good music and active imaginations. As our Marine Don Huebner puts it, quote, "Tropical moonlight affected all of us to the utmost. and we young bucks yearned for feminine companionship during those long, balmy nights." Close quote. Similar personalities broadcast everywhere. Germany has Axis Sally and Lord Ha-Ha. The poet, Ezra Pound, broadcasts for fascists on Radio Rome. Similar to Lord Ha-Ha, Tokyo Rose is not any single person and is mostly a myth, but the woman who most closely embodies her is Iva Toguri. Iva was born in LA in 1916 and enrolled at UCLA in 1940, but she left for Japan in July 1941. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, she elected to stay in Japan for the duration of the war. In November 1943, she began her job with Radio Tokyo as a typist. Meanwhile, the Japanese took 3 POWs with a broadcasting background: an Australian named Major Charles Cousins, an American, Ted Ince, and a Filipino, Norman Reyes. All 3 were tortured and forced to put their broadcasting experience to use running the propaganda program 0 Hour for Radio Tokyo. The head of the program, Charles Cousins, decided to maliciously comply by making a program where all the obvious propaganda is placed in one single segment, and the rest is all pleasant music and reading letters from POWs. In a real Hogan's Heroes plan, they insist on using the instrumental opening to the song Strike Up the Band and ask the audience to sing along. The Japanese don't know the song, but every soldier happily sings. There is work to be done. There's a war to be won. Come on, you son of a gun. Take your stand. Iva is elevated from typist to DJ because the Japanese think her American accent will make soldiers homesick, dreaming of the girls they left behind. She gets the name Orphan Ann, or Annie, after the American cartoon character, later claiming to take the name because she also feels homeless between Japan and America. She takes to calling her listeners "my favorite orphans," a choice that is oddly morbid and works against her at her future trial. But with that background, why don't we listen in for ourselves? Let's break away from the beaches and instead head to the broadcast room of Radio Tokyo and see one of Iva's turns at the mic. It's still 6 in the evening, August 14th, 1944. But now we're in Studio 5 of Radio Tokyo. Sitting across from Charles Cousins at a table with their scripts ready to speak into the microphone placed before them, Ted Ince and Norman Reyes are set up to drop records on cue. From a window, Japanese authorities watch over them. And so, Charles starts off the broadcast with the usual propaganda that he's placed purposefully here at the top.
On the Indo-Burma front, the Japanese forces inflicted tremendous blows on the enemy troops of over 30,000 in battles around Mitikina. Within a period of 5 months up to the end of July, the enemy suffered the loss of more than 15,000 men, including those killed, wounded, and taken prisoner.
When Charles says enemy, in this instance, keep in mind he's talking about Allied troops. That sounds really bad. 15,000 troops lost. And it's not very far from the truth. But keep in mind that Radio Tokyo won't be reporting on the nearly 85,000 Japanese troops that died from disease, losing the fight to the Indian Army. Okay, that's enough news. Let's hear from the famed Tokyo Rose.
Hello, you fighting orphans of the Pacific. How's Chick? This is after her weekend, Annie, back on the air strictly under UN hours. Reception okay? Well, it better be, because this is all request night. The first request is made by none other than the boss. And guess what? He wants Bonnie Baker. The second request is sent in by a roaming bonehead of an orphan. He wants Tony Martin, of all people, to help him forget the mosquitoes and dirty rifles. Well, you know, obliging Annie, Tony Martin, and now it can be told.
That's how these broadcasts go. Occasionally, you'll hear mention of things like mosquitoes and dirty laundry, or sadness over being away from home. But mostly, it's Iva introducing songs. After the war, public outrage over Tokyo Rose leads to her trial. Charles, Ted, and Norman testify on her behalf, but Iva is convicted of treason and sentenced to 10 years at the Federal Reformatory for Women in Alderson, West Virginia. President Gerald Ford will pardon her in 1977, and she'll manage her father's shop in Chicago until her death in 2006 at the age of 90. So, we've come to the end of our tale of America's World War II propaganda. A tale of the U.S. effort to harness movies, comics, cartoons, and more for the war effort. This really is total war, and every nation, Allied and Axis alike, is doing their best to convince their citizens to buy their side's narrative. But as we reflect and close, I do think that, when it comes to propaganda, there's one final distinction worth making between the Nazi regime's amoralism and the United States' heavy lean on entertainment. Dr. Joseph Goebbels had the power of a totalitarian state behind him. But in the United States, the OWI couldn't stop or change all works of art or media that it disapproved of. Norman Rockwell tossed and turned in the night with an idea on his own accord. Frank Capra volunteered. The artists, writers, and filmmakers, the entertaining men and women who made Captain America come to life and brought us to tears in a gin joint in North Africa, they personally believed in the American story, in liberty, in democracy, in the four freedoms. And that belief is precisely what made their work so damn effective. The best propaganda doesn't feel like propaganda. And the reason America's World War II propaganda so often clears that bar is that, for many of the people making it, it wasn't propaganda at all. It was conviction. And I suppose that's why I love Norman Rockwell's Four Freedoms and Warner Brothers' Casablanca, because I share their conviction. I can own that bias. Vive la démocratie. But in the name of that very conviction, we can't give America a pass on all of its war propaganda. There's a dark side, too, one built on racist stereotypes intended to dehumanize the Japanese people so thoroughly as to justify not only war abroad, but internment at home. Yes, next time, we'll starkly face one of America's greatest failures of World War II and the 20th century: Japanese internment. History That Doesn't Suck is created and hosted by me, Greg Jackson. Episode researched and written by Greg Jackson and Will King. Executive editor, Riley Neubauer. Recording of La Marseillaise, generously provided by Médiathèque Musicale de Paris, Christian et de Pierre, Ville de Paris. Production by Airship. Audio editing by Mohammed Shahzaid. Sound design by Molly Bach. Theme music composed by Greg Jackson. Arrangement and additional composition by Lindsey Graham of Airship. For bibliography of all primary and secondary sources consulted in writing this episode, visit htdspodcast.com. HTDS is supported by fans at htdspodcast.com/membership. My gratitude to you kind souls providing funding to help us continue. Thank you. And a special thanks to our patrons whose monthly gift puts them at producer status. Adam Gorin, Ahmad Chapman, Andrew Nissen, Andrew Sherwin, Anna M. Hutta, Art Lang, Bob Stinnett, Bonnie Brooks, Brian Galligan, Brian Boyles, Brian Goodson, Bruce Hibbert, Hayden Howitz, Charles Clendenin, Charles Starkey, Charlie Mages, Christopher Merchant, Christopher Pullman, Cindy Rosenthal, Feline Martin, Colin Fairs Pennington, Connor Hogan, Craig Burhost, Dan G., Daniel O'Kane, Darren Chambers, David Rifkin, Dean Heiser, Durante Spencer, Donald Moore, Ellie Edwards, Elizabeth Christiansen, Ellen Stewart, Ernie Lowmaster, Ethan Lowry, Ethan Thompson, G2303, Jeffrey Nelson, George J. Sherwood, Gareth Griffin, Gina Johnson, Henry Brunges, Holly Hamilton, Jake Gilbreth, James Bledsoe, James Blue, James Schlender, Jarrett Zangora, Jeff Dempsey, Jeffrey Moots, Jennifer Mingione, Jennifer Ruth, Jeremy Wells, Jerome Edwards, Jessica Poppett, Joe Dobis, John Boovy, John Frugal-Dougal, John Huber, John Messmer, John Oliveros, John Rudlevich, John Schaefer, Jonathan Sheff, Jordan Corbett, Joshua Steiner, Julian Wright, Justin May, Justin Spriggs, Carl and Elizabeth Salling, Carl Friedman, Carl Hindle, Ken Culver, Kim R., Kristen Pratt, Kyle Decker, L. Paul Goringer, L. Norman, Lawrence Neubauer, Linda Cunningham, Mark Ellis, Marcia Smith, Matt Siegel, Micah Perryman, Michael Sullivan, Nick Cattrall, Owen W. Sedlak, Pamela Fiedler, Peter Hugenroth, Philip May, Rick Runkle, Rick Brown, Robert Drazovich, Rock Day, Sam Holtzman, Sarah Prescott, Sarah Trewick, Shannon Hoagland, Sharon Thiessen, Sean Baines, Sean Cohen, Stacy Ritter, Steve Williams, The Creepy Girl, Thomas Churchill, Thomas Matthew Edwards, Thomas Sabbath, Tim and Sarah Turner, Todd Curran, Tom Bastofka, Travis Cox, Wesley McKee, and Zach Jackson. Join me in 2 weeks, where I'd like to tell you a story.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I work at United Healthcare. When I think about United Healthcare's members, I think of my own family. My niece was diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic disorder. I know how hard it is for families. At United Healthcare, we can make it easier.
I'm Brian. I care because I know what it's like to not speak the language. It's not easy. Health insurance is complicated. I would say our job is to make everything easy for our UHC members. I work for United Healthcare. I'm committed to care.